It really rattled. It rocked our marriage.
Yeah.
It really did. I'm sorry.
Oh. Do you not want to talk about this?
No, I do. Damn. It's okay. It's okay. I can talk about it.
Hi there. Generally speaking, I'd like to keep these intros very short, but I feel like it's important to provide a little bit of context. The following is a conversation with my father exploring our evolving relationship. We discussed something that happened 5 years ago that profoundly affected how we view one another. Really proud of my dad for being as vulnerable as he was. My dad runs a channel called Beneath the Surface that I will link to in the description or show notes that I highly recommend you check out. Now, just before we dive into the episode itself, I wanted to talk briefly about my new course, Frame by Frame. This has been a gigantic undertaking. I built Frame by Frame to share everything that I know about editing and animation. It's a post-production masterclass. These are the skills that have allowed me to create a life and a career that allows me to do what I want. I have control over what I get to do every day. I get to do things like this podcast and create very cinematic videos that I'm proud of. I get to work with creative, ambitious people that are as excited about all of this stuff as I am. Like, I can't even imagine my life without this skill set. If you've ever seen one of my videos and thought to yourself, man, I would love to be able to do this, Frame by Frame is the course to teach you how. If you're a working animator or editor, we'll teach you how to level up your game. And if you'd like to become an animator or editor, we'll dig deep into how to get started. I can save you months upon months of time going through YouTube videos, the frustration of having to figure things out for yourself. I've been at this for the better part of a decade, and it took me years before I felt like I began really making quality work. So I can speed you along that learning process. One warning though, this course is not for the faint-hearted. Okay, we have over 20 hours of core course material, in-depth videos and breakdowns. Each class includes 5 weeks of live discussions that take place with me, my brother, Sky, who is the animator behind all the animations in all of my videos, and my lead editor in my team, Lucas. And during those live sessions, we answer questions and share everything that we know in crazy granular detail. So this is definitely not for everybody, but if you are up for the challenge and want to dive straight into the deep end and learn more, you can go to fxfcourse.com and sign up to the email list to be notified when the course becomes available. Okay, enough about that. Let's dive into today's episode. I have featured you and Mom a lot more in my content recently. Like, you guys showed up a million times in my videos last year. That really isn't an accident. That really came about, I think, because we're aligning and we're getting very close, particularly recently. And I think from the outside, it looks kind of like the perfect relationship, right? Like really close, supportive parents. Mm-hmm. And you really are. I mean, you really are. That's 100% the reality of today, but it wasn't always that way. Just like with any relationship, I think there's tricky moments, tricky periods, right? So I thought it would be great for us to do a little retrospective and dig into a few things that have happened in the last few years, in an effort to just practice vulnerability and talk about this and share this, I think, because I do believe the relationship that we have is very special, but it doesn't happen by accident, I think, is sort of one of the very big conclusive thoughts from all of this. Yeah. Do you agree with everything I just said, by the way?
Yeah. So you're asking to go beneath the surface?
Yeah. All right. How many times can we make that pun? I really did want to center a lot of this conversation around what happened in 2018, 5 years ago. Do you want to paint the picture, or do you want me to set the context for what happened? Because it was a very pivotal year in our relationship as a father-son.
Yeah. We had no idea what we were getting into.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
We really did not.
I mean, I'll kind of kick it off.
Or how about this? Give some context for where you were at in life at that point.
Yeah. And in fact, I was going to do that. 2017 was, I felt the bottom had fallen from under my feet. I felt
You're right about 50 years old, right? At that time.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
50?
Yeah, around
50-ish.
50. Yeah.
So a bit of a midlife crisis taking place.
You could say maybe not. I mean, it was just mainly business based
Okay.
that I'm talking about. A lot of I wasn't getting work. I mean, suddenly it was like work stopped. I wasn't getting the projects that I wanted, that I was used to. That was the year that I started letting go people.
Okay.
You were among them. I mean, you dropped out at one point. You're like, I kind of don't want to do this anymore. You were getting on set to work with people on bigger and better projects.
Let me explain a little bit more. So
Yeah.
you for decades now have been an independent business owner running your own production company.
Right.
And working kind of as a producer, kind of as a director at this time.
Trying to be.
Editor,
Editor.
any kind of video projects.
Yeah.
And at that time, or prior to that, I had kind of assisted a little bit as like.
You were on set a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
around that time, you were doing a lot of stuff. We were doing a lot of stuff together. And I was sort of building up this image of myself, right? That I was going to be, I was going to become this important director somehow. I was going to get out of the publishing stuff we were doing, and I was going to start doing short films.
Right.
And in a way, I was going to show you all how great I was, right? There was an agenda to sort of be important, be special, and show my loved ones and be admired.
Yeah,
for
and
it, right?
to really paint the picture here, what we were actually doing, not to just like squash what you just said, but like the reality was at that time we were doing a lot of small scale, like 4 or 5 or 6 man crew shoots, right? That were kind of scrappy.
Yeah.
And I think you had a vision for where you wanted things to go. But a lot of it was like
I
educational
don't think
material.
I did. I don't think I had an idea. It was going to just naturally grow, and I would become this important person in the film world. I don't know what fantasy I was having. And so the work stopped coming, and I remember my main project manager kind of dropped out, or I had to let her go. Or actually, I think she quit because it was like nothing was happening, and she needed to move on. And I delayed. It's very hard to let go of people, right? Sometimes. When you've got a team and you want it to work and it's just the work isn't there.
Right.
And so I remember a couple people, also others, I won't mention names, and then you also sort of were off to other better, I mean, you were looking to get on set and do cool things.
Yeah, that's right.
Grow
That's
I think you were doing YouTube by then.
I was doing some YouTube videos, but I was also working on sets for commercials and as an editor and whatnot. So yeah, I was on the hunt.
Yeah.
But basically, end of 2017, you land.
So I'm in Seattle in December, I think November or December, and I'm trying to, fishing for clientele and probably going to Founders Live and just, doing events and trying to sort of network. And then the email comes from McGraw-Hill that we landed this big project to go throughout Latin America and Spain to shoot these Spanish videos to teach college students, first-year college students, how to speak the language.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the format of what we did in a moment.
Yeah, but
the news
this is a really important point here. Like, I really want to emphasize that, and I'm going to spike the camera here. This is not something I usually do. I'm looking straight at the camera. Like, this was the dream project. It sounded amazing. We are imagining this very naively as this opportunity as a father and son to travel through Latin America over the course of 6 months. We're thinking about all these incredible experiences we can have. You're probably excited and happy that you can hire your son. You were going to direct. I was going to shoot, right?
Yes.
Because I was a lot more comfortable using a camera than you were, which we can go into that actually.
Boy.
But basically, it sounded incredible.
Yeah. It when I got that, I mean, I still have the text, I think, of like sharing with you and Mom, we got the gig. And remember, we had been bidding on, I don't know how many McGraw-Hill projects. I think this was the 10th big, and we were doing animations and a whole variety of things, but this was like the 10th attempt to get a project.
Right.
And in comes this, and you remember the proposal? It was going to be a 1-person arrangement or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or something.
Right.
I gave them options and they picked the trio, I don't know, I called each tier some kind of the name.
Yeah.
And so they chose the trio, which would be myself, you, and a local audio person.
Yeah, in each
right?
location.
Which is what we did.
Right. So basically, just for people outside of the industry. So first of all, McGraw-Hill is a major publisher in the United States, or around the world, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
And what you basically did was you pitched them a variety of different potential options, and they selected one, and you got a budget according to that, right? And,
which seemed pretty good.
and you were selected basically amongst a bunch of options.
Right.
Okay. Right. So keep going. I just want to make sure it's all so clear.
Please provide the right context. And even the contact at McGraw-Hill, who was in charge of these proposals, said, Josh, finally, you got to, you won out over all these other people. They loved what you had to say. And so that was the initial sort of fantasy about how this was going to go. Mm-hmm. I was going to direct, you were going to shoot, and I don't know. I mean, what do we share next? I mean, so much happened because a lot of 2018 was, is the better part of 100 days on the road, where we would go. We left for 30 days, came back, left again for 45 days, came back, and then we did the last 2 weeks in Europe.
It's going to be you and me spending an extraordinary amount of time together across, I think the total count was like 12 countries, right? I mean, we went to
12, that many?
Okay, I'll just run through some of the ones off the top of my head. We spent time in multiple locations in Mexico, multiple locations in the US, including Puerto Rico. Right. We spent time in Uruguay, Chile, Ecuador, Colombia. We went to Panama. That was not even part of the plan originally. Costa Rica, Spain. So anyway, long list,
around
a lot of locations.
10-ish countries, 15 cities, I think it was.
And we don't have to go into all the details necessarily, but I do think it's really important to capture what happened at the very beginning of the trip and then what ensued. So we hit the road like sometime in February.
I remember 5th of March, 2018.
5th of March, okay, early March.
Yeah.
And we're shooting in Georgia.
Yes.
And how would you describe that very, very first day on set?
So I came to Athens. I was going to run audio. We were going to save. This was so crazy.
Oh my God.
Someone needed to stop us. We needed to stop each other or something. But we were going to save because the budget started getting tight. We're like, well, have me run audio. What's the harm in that? We get a couple lavaliers. What?
So you were going to direct and run audio at the same time. And it was just you and me, basically. Yeah. Those first days.
Yeah.
Oh, and a PA.
And
we had a PA.
We were going to get someone to, well, no, you wanted a PA because you wanted someone to assist with sound.
Yeah.
So we find ourselves in this real pickle of, we don't have enough resources.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to do too much. And it's kind of run and gun type shooting. You get there, you're with the talent, but you don't know what the story is yet. We were not doing pre-production of sitting down with the talent like we did later on to find out how do we tell your story, right? Where do we go? What do we do?
Yeah.
And
what happened with the audio? Why don't you explain
the audio?
That piece?
I had tried to do audio with you on set before that using bad equipment.
This equipment that you bought weeks prior. And there were problems on that first shoot, even before we went on this trip. And you hadn't even checked that yet, right? You didn't even know there were problems with the audio gear.
No, I knew there were problems.
You knew that, and you didn't communicate that to me?
And I'm like, you know what? This is good enough. I was like in some kind of like crazy, we'll make this work type mode. But this was just the beginning of me.
This was just the beginning, yeah. So basically...
So the gear is bad. The audio, I don't know how we survived that first shoot because in fact, we came back to Athens later on at the end anyway to redo that city, which is interesting. But I was doing a crappy job of the audio. I was not directing well. There was no story. Okay. So we fumbled through that shoot. The author, who was the language coach in that city, we had a language coach in each city, got nervous. She was very nervous. And so we leave Athens and we go to Mexico.
But hold on, you're skipping a tremendous amount of details here.
Okay.
I really want to drill down on the emotional side of this journey. Okay. Because I think the details are the details, right? That first day on set where I make the discovery that this audio is completely unusable. Like there's tremendous interference. I am afraid, actually, for the first time about the 6 months ahead of us, because I'm like, oh shit, we are in trouble.
Yes.
We are underprepared. We do not have the right equipment. We don't have like the right support and expertise, right? Because I cannot also be doing audio while running the camera.
Right.
And that is where I think this idea of this incredible voyage, father-son bonding, that image begins to crumble.
Right.
And in a really violent way, I would say. Right? I think it's fair to say that. Like for me, what ensued was incredibly intense.
I mean, that was just the beginning. It kept getting deeper and deeper and worse.
I think it's really important for me to capture this conversation with you and show that we went through a really intense experience.
Yeah.
Where very quickly I lost a lot of respect for you.
Yes.
You know, I'm 20 years old during this. And after day 1 or on day 2, we more or less decided that I needed to be the one directing, right?
Well, we were getting hunches that things were obviously very broken.
Yeah.
It wasn't until Mexico that you proposed to me. You started at some point in time, okay? It was quite early on. You started saying, Dad, maybe you shouldn't direct. Maybe that's something you need to give over to me to do. And I toyed with it. It was difficult, but I could see that I was failing. I was just failing really badly and in front of my son. So there's the father-son thing going on. There's the working together professionally thing going on. I'm essentially looking entirely like a fool.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that because I was so used to working with other people all those years before and delegating, I got lazy. It was like, people will help me out. I'll just come on set. I'll say action. I had this fantasy about calling action and cut. It was like this
an ego boost.
Stupid, ego-driven nothing.
Yeah.
Anything. I mean, there's nothing to that unless you do all the hard work. So I fell into this self-created trap of thinking that somehow we were going to figure it out. I had you on the team and you were going to be this incredible support, which you were. And thank God I had you on the team because you ended up directing. You ended up having those pre-production proper meetings with people so we could get what we needed. You started creating docs and schedules and things.
Well, I had to because there were no systems and there was no way we were going to do it.
The more I wanted to step up to the plate, the worse I did because it was a series of mistakes. It was a series of lack of an ability to keep up. Also, my role, you have to remember this, and this it's not an excuse, but it's a reality. I was taking on being the PA, the producer, the guy running around, getting money out, paying talent, buying food, making sandwiches.
It didn't make sense to be doing all that.
I was doing everything I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I was the person or the people I was supposed to be hiring to do this stuff. And so along the way, I was just looking like a complete idiot. I mean, until, I don't know. I mean, did that change in your mind? Did it get better? I remember you saying we got to Athens, which we started in Athens, and at the end it was Athens again because they had us come back. And you're like, it's funny, nothing's changed, Dad.
Yeah.
You and I are still doing the same things we did 100 days ago.
With more expletives. Probably I said that a lot more vulgar.
And I was like, I can't win. Yeah. I cannot win this one. I cannot become hero dad, director guy who got it. Yeah. You know?
Well, things did not change so basically, I mean, we don't have to go into the details. We can, if there's particular learnings that you want to share, but I think it's safe to say, in my eyes, no dynamics truly changed over the course of those 6 months. It really was insanely stressful, insanely frustrating as well. And I think one big takeaway I had from this is that, we didn't have time. You'd never had time throughout those 6 months to get a breather, to stabilize, to create systems. Like it was constantly on to the next country, on to the next shoot.
Well, we should talk about that, right? Because
But I want to also, just to finish this point,
Yeah.
like when it's like that, there is no time and space to change. You know what I mean? You're in the hurricane.
yes.
And unfortunately, I just saw you, as you put it, fall to your, what is it, lowest level of preparation? When
I
shit
can't
hits
remember
the
the
fan.
line, and I used that quote in the video I did,
Yeah.
but it's something like you fall to your. Say it again, because you seem to remember
Something like that. I mean, it's basically when shit hits the fan,
Yeah.
you fall to your lowest level of preparation, right? Like just,
Right. Whatever you came in with as preparation is how you're going to perform when when you're dropping down to that depth.
and there was almost no preparation. I mean,
Yeah.
the truth of the matter was that you didn't even know the manual settings of a camera, right?
Yeah.
So we were sort of forced to fall into the roles that we fell into. Right. And I learned a lot about myself throughout this experience as well, because I realized I'd almost rather die than do something I am humiliated by or about, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I am not okay. There's no cell in my body that's okay with low quality, mediocre work. Like, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And this is partially how I've been raised.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in particular, I think like mom has been a major, I mean, both of you guys, but mom in particular has really instilled this in me. And I think that created tremendous tension because I was terrified by the potential of us looking like fools for 6 months and doing shit quality work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you saved the project, and I've told you that many times, because you could have been someone else who didn't have those high standards, who couldn't direct, who couldn't do everything that you had to do. So, and here I am, as you're describing all that, you're rising to an occasion, right? You're sort of doing whatever you can to save this project. And I'm like, I feel like I'm underwater the whole time. Like the water's rising and I'm like, my nose is out enough to be able to breathe and just keep up. It was that kind of horrific situation that you can win. And only after, I've been doing therapy for a long time. And it was thanks to my therapist that I could see that this was all good for me. Like without him, without that work, I wouldn't be able to see how good this was for me. I mean, it sucks. I wish I could change time. I wish we didn't have to talk about this,
But I think it's an important
But it was such
chapter.
a deep, important learning experience for me and for you too, right?
Huge.
For mom, for Skylar even, who was on the edge and he was affected.
Skylar, my brother.
Yeah. And especially mom. It really rocked our marriage.
Yeah.
It really did. I'm sorry.
Do you not want to talk about this?
No, I do. Damn. It's okay. I can talk about it. This is, wow, that welled up.
Well, hold on, because I think we're getting to something really real here.
Well, let me finish. You want me to finish the thought?
Absolutely, please. But I do want to just mention, because probably people watching or listening to this are like, where the fuck is this going? This has a happy ending.
Yeah,
But
it does.
But I want you to finish this thought.
You need to hit rock bottom sometimes, It needs to go to shit before you can rebuild something. And I think if you're awake enough and interested enough, like I was, fortunately, to go, okay, what happened? And to have the support of my therapist, which is huge, to be able to say, and he kept saying, this was good for you. These ideas you had of being a director, of being special. I no longer think I'm special. And I can feel that part of me, it's still in me, right? Some kind of ego part wants to be special, but I know I'm not. And that's okay. It's okay to fail. I mean, what is failure? But to just
To fall apart.
To fall apart entirely and go, okay, who am I really? Okay, I'm somebody who cares about my relationships, cares about personal growth, and eventually cares to tell stories in my own unique way, and that's what I've been doing. And that's how filmmaking, if you will, or storytelling really became the right fit for me. It wasn't what I was trying to do. How can I be who I really am and then come through whatever work I do?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be videos, though I love making videos.
I mean, I really think those are like beautiful, very powerful takeaways. It is important for me to drill down on the fact that I was extremely angry with you. I mean, you acted like a child during that period. I mean,
it's hard to hear.
I know, and I'm sorry, but I feel like we have the level of communication to be able to.
I can't argue.
There was such insanely poor communication on your side that you wouldn't let me know about upcoming problems until they blew up in our faces throughout those 6 months. And what that resulted in was an inability to trust you. I felt jumpy around you because I'm like, can he do anything, right? Because I wasn't sure where I could count on you to come through.
Right.
And I think you also sometimes, because of the dynamic, probably saw me as like the enemy or whatever, because I was charging forward, I was providing direction.
Yeah.
And there is a degree of severity that comes out from me, an aggressive side that
you were trying to survive. You were doing the best you could to stay afloat.
And I learned a lot about the tendency that I have to be very aggressive in the pursuit of something that I feel is important. And obviously I never intended to squash you, but I think the mixture of anger and the poor, the degrading trust, it led to this just absolute.
I think it's important that you're saying that, because as I'm feeling destroyed, I think Michael called it eviscerated. As I was feeling eviscerated, he did it like a document of quotes and paragraphs, letting myself be eviscerated. I'm like, oh my God, what a title. There you were, right? And you weren't just this outside force that wasn't, you weren't going to say to me that it's okay. You're doing fine. We're going to be fine. You can do better. There was none of that. And that's what I wanted. Right. And on top of it, you're my son.
Yeah.
And so it was the perfect storm for me to destroy ideas about myself.
Yeah.
The perfect amount of elements that then allowed me to create a new beginning. And part of that beginning was taking, the first 30 days and doing a behind the scenes that only you've seen and probably will only see, telling the raw story of how it felt on just the first 30 days.
Like a therapeutic exercise.
It was very therapeutic, and it opened things up for me to go, I like telling stories like that. Yeah. I like that. I want to.
We've drilled down quite a bit on this particular 6-month period. And the consequences of that time reverberated for years, actually.
Yeah.
So shortly after that project, not like 6 months later, I moved to a foreign country. I moved to Mexico.
Yep.
This was not entirely unconnected. I found it very difficult living with you after this. Residual resentment and anger.
Yeah.
And I think we both needed a lot of time to process this. You were sort of a shell of the person that you were before, but kind of in a good way. You were like there was a lot of introspection taking place.
Yeah.
But I think I lost tremendous respect for you. Yeah. So I couldn't, it was an ugly time. It was an ugly time because I couldn't look at you straight in the face and like have a serious conversation. There was a passive aggressive, like condescending tone probably in a lot of what I said in any interaction.
Which I had to allow. I had to let you,
It wasn't the best way to handle it, but I think I needed to leave and process things.
And that for any parent hearing those words, I mean, the worst thing you could tell a parent, right, is that your child does not respect you.
Yeah.
It's just, just hearing it, it's like your son just lost respect for you.
Yeah.
And so, 2019, as you were exploding on YouTube, I had another tanking year. I was bidding on projects, was not getting anything. I was like, it was this continued dissolution of me.
Yeah.
Even after the fact, as we were trying to, I don't even remember how that year went in terms of being in touch. If we got along, I mean, we weren't rude to each other.
Well, the distance helped, but we didn't communicate anywhere near the amount that we do now. In a sense, we lost each other. I think you probably felt you lost me, and I actually felt like I lost you. These are intense words.
Yes.
Okay. That I'm gonna say here. And again, I feel like it's important to point to the fact that this does end up having a happy ending, but it did feel like losing my dad, right? Because superhero guy, that I looked up to growing up, I'm seeing him just fall apart before my eyes, and it was just so difficult, and I think this is where it's so challenging understanding emotions, because here I am being passive aggressive or like condescending, or just like I can't handle hanging around you because I'm angry at you, because my idea of you is falling apart, and I want you to be this guy I look up to. And at that time it couldn't be that. And that was so hard. And I think it's really important that we're sharing this, because again, when you just look at the videos on YouTube or whatever, you would never know any of this stuff. But it was really, there's this idea that Jung has. I don't know if you've ever heard about this, about becoming an adult.
What did you say?
You have to witness either the literal or spiritual death of your parents.
Yes.
And it did feel like a spiritual death in a sense, because I was like, oh my God,
this is my dad. Look at what he's doing day after day. Yeah.
And I just had never seen that before, because we'd never, this was a once in a lifetime.
Well, it was
experience.
So much easier to hide it, right? And to pretend, it's interesting to hear your perspective on what happened. Like, I would love to know more about what happened in 2019, getting into, like when did anything change? Because by 2021, we went to Iceland. So by then, by the time we got to Austin and visited your brother, things were good. We were more united,
Time heals. But I think more than anything, what I needed to see was some degree of change, some degree of self-reflection or introspection. Because very easily, if I didn't see that, we could still be in exactly the same dynamic of 2019, of me not wanting to hang around you this year, right?
Yeah.
But I could tell you were not going to just move on and pretend nothing had happened. I think you really were forced. The work that you did with your therapist was huge. That was a real declaration of your commitment to growing from this whole thing. And you didn't move on from it. You did you worked on that behind the scenes video series that was literally just for you. And then eventually you shared it with me for like 6 months.
Yeah.
You spent as much time working on that. Yeah.
40 minutes of content, 40 minutes for just 30 days of travel.
That's crazy. So what really struck me was, and it never happened like in one day, but there were small changes that I began to notice when we would spend time together. For a long time, I've known you as having these periods of having dark clouds, right? Like you'd have this thing bother you, and then you wouldn't let anyone know, but we all can tell you're really bothered.
Right.
And
but
then
I'm going to pretend.
You're going to pretend or be in denial about it.
Yes.
It doesn't really happen as much anymore. And I don't know if we can point to any single thing, but things like that, where I would notice these changes. I think there were also small opportunities when I came to visit for the first time after quite a bit of time.
The surprise
being separate.
visit?
Yeah, the surprise visit during, like after some of the lockdowns during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then kind of throwing out the spontaneous idea of going to Iceland, and you're down, and how well that went.
Yes.
Not having to work together, and you...
Oh, what a relief.
You sort of demonstrating a greater degree of looseness, and you were actually learning the goddamn settings of your camera. Finally. I tried to teach you so many times.
Finally.
Big lesson for me.
Do you know how many moments I've had of, oh, that's what he was talking about. Oh, that's what he was trying to... Remember in Latin America, you would quiz me. Okay, you're in a forest setting, and like you were trying to get me to understand settings, and I was absolutely so not willing to learn. That was part of the problem. I wasn't willing to learn and open myself up.
I feel like we can talk about this because we're so, like, we've processed so much of this. Yeah. But I will say, major lesson for me on you can't make people change. I really tried so hard, and it was such a source of tension and such a source of pain for both you and me. I wanted you to be different. I tried to teach you these things, and you just were not going to learn them. You learned them in your own time.
Yeah.
And when I dropped it, when I stopped doing that, it created space for things to improve.
Right. Where you could accept me, or you could have accepted me potentially as I was.
Which at the time I didn't. At the time I didn't because I saw it. The deeper spiritual truth is that you are who you are, or how you are, and so am I, right? And the way for us to be able to coexist is an acceptance of that. But at the time, I saw the way you were operating as a problem that needed to be fixed because of the dynamic that it created, the fear that would come up within me that we are going to be mediocre losers doing this crappy job, right?
Yeah.
And those are my own emotional triggers for me to deal with.
What's fascinating to me is, in the end, I had to do all this work for me because, it sounds egotistical, but the person that matters the most to us is us. We're the most important person, not because we need our egos to take over, but because it's our own experience, right, of anything. And
this journey that you're on.
We need to turn inward and be in ourselves. And I think if I hadn't done a lot of this hard work, first of all, I would have missed out on a great opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
But then in that process, I got you guys back in a way. It was like not just you and me, but with Mom. I mean, our marriage was very unstable that year. She kept seeing me do things she had seen for years.
Right.
And she kept saying, she actually has told me, she was glad you shook me up so much, the project, the chemistry, that I was able to finally listen and give up these ideas, this image I had for myself. And she'll always tell you she wasn't able to do that as my wife, but it happened in this thing we had going on. And eventually I kind of shed this layer that opened everything up.
Definitely. I mean, you said something that I think a lot of people will misunderstand, which is the importance of working on yourself and how that is in many ways the most important relationship that you have.
Right.
And it is only by having done that you were actually able to, as you said, show up in such a more genuine, more intentional way in all of your other relationships with all of us.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right.
But I want to say that differently, because by doing the work, I no longer had an agenda. So I could be me, and then naturally by being me in this more genuine way, like you've said, I was able to be more attractive, you could say, or open to exchanges and less of a dark cloud, or whatever you want to call it, that allowed for a better relationship flow, or whatever you might call that.
I started the answer by saying there were, time helped, small changes took place, and then big changes took place. And all of a sudden, you're doing these things that are regaining my respect in many ways. And I was surprised by this. I was really surprised by your capacity to change, because all of a sudden you're doing, for me, I think what matters more is the energy behind it, right? But selling the house in the United States and leaving, uprooting your life, because for many years, both of you were expressing this desire to do this, but the courage to actually do it.
Yeah.
And the drive and the energy that I know that took.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Those were actions that spoke infinitely louder than any words you could have ever told me.
Right.
And I'm seeing you guys behave in this way that I do respect. That it didn't have to be leaving the country, but what I liked was the courage. What I liked was the commitment to living more intentionally and learning from all these experiences. And my view of you did tremendously shift. And what has a natural consequence of that, what I'd never expected, is I enjoy hanging out with you more again. And here we are seeing each other every few weeks, and I want to have this podcast conversation with you. And all of a sudden I'm showing you in all these videos because I respect you more. I like hanging out with you more. It feels natural. It doesn't feel forced. And I think it's because we both, over the last 5 years, did a lot of personal work to try and sort out a lot of the ugliness.
So people will say, and I appreciate all your words, by the way, thank you. People don't understand that you have to do that work to have the relationships they're seeing in these videos, right?
Yeah.
They wonder, how do I get that? What's the secret sauce? The secret sauce, you got to look internally. You got to get support from the outside because therapy is important. Mm-hmm. Some people will laugh at therapy. Okay. But it's the way I talk about therapy. It's like sports. There's no athlete who doesn't have a coach. It doesn't exist. Right. And so to do personal work, you need that outside support. And then if you do the internal stuff, it shows up externally in how you attract your children or how you relate to the people around you. So it's kind of like saying to someone, you want to be healthy, you got to get on a diet, you got to go to the gym. And those are the things people don't want to do, right? And so there is no shortcut. There really isn't.
What is amazing about this, I mean, I do feel incredibly fortunate. I feel like I was not harsh, but very on like the topic of how insanely stressful and how much tension there was in a relationship before. But I think it's really important for me to emphasize now the difference, and how fortunate I feel that you are willing to have a very high degree of, like, I guess the word is accountability, right?
Yeah.
And a desire to grow, because I think it's certainly within all of our capacity to do the same, but it does demand tremendous bravery.
Yeah.
Because you have to face that super ugly, whatever the ugliness is within you.
And it hurts. It hurts. It's uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah. But again, it's a happy ending, and it just shows. It shows the value of doing this work.
You felt, what do you think happened after those 6 months that led to this major shift within you? Do you think you could expand on that a little more? Did you feel like it was just impossible at that point to double down on what you had done before?
Yeah.
Because for many years already, and this is a thing that I think people don't understand, that I would like to point out.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of what you've done with your channel. You're doing an amazing job editing those videos and shooting them. But it wasn't always like that. You worked in the film industry for probably 15 years or 20 years without ever learning the manual settings of your camera, and it's weird now to see you.
It's extremely weird. I could have shot with you on the road. We would have bonded that way. We would have gotten more footage, more angles. Yeah. Like, but I didn't think that I had the capacity to do it. And part of the problem was not having enough of a team. I would never, ever do a project like that again.
No, of course.
But anyway, all sorts of complications that, led to what happened. But it is so much more relaxed to be on my own now. I think you and I still don't mix, right? We don't love working with each other.
No, I think it's better that we don't work together.
No, because when we're shooting anything, anytime you're pointing out what I'm doing wrong or what I could be doing, I tend to be like, no, get out of my space. I don't need to be told. And so the channel, what I'm doing now, is allowing me to do things my way.
Yeah.
And it turned out that doing a solo approach to it was way better than trying to be this big guy with bigger and bigger teams.
Yeah.
I was going to write screenplays. I suck at writing screenplays. So it's like, why not do what I can do best? And it's worked out great in a way that I could have never imagined.
And there was a nervousness too, right? That was always there when you were on set.
Well, especially, yes. I mean, in general with people, I was a nervous wreck. I hated being on set.
And you're so much more in your element when you're doing your own thing. You know what's funny? I feel like I deserve a little credit on this one. I pointed out to you all of your best edits over the years
have been the family stuff.
The family vacation videos you would do, just goofing around. And then you would shoot these behind the scenes, whatever, of our trips. And then you would do these insane edits where I was like, where is this coming from? It's so good. So you poured so much love into it.
Right.
Because that's the thing too. I feel like a lot of art forms, certainly with video editing, for example, you don't have to be the most talented person in the world. If you pour your soul into it and you take your time, pass after pass after pass, you can make something really special.
Yeah.
And that's what you did. And that was, I think that led to me being like, I think you should have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you did. And it's funny because now that I think back on those days, the trip to the UK as a family or the East Coast, I wasn't thinking of myself as anything. It was just me telling the stories I could share with you guys. However, when it came time to screening night and we would be seated, I would get very nervous.
Yeah.
And I wanted the feedback. I wanted the, validation. So, those were, let's just say, stronger components no matter what.
Yeah.
That have kind of softened over time because I've taken a real close look at what validation means and being special and not believing in it, even though part of my ego does. But the editing, telling the stories was so flowing because I wasn't Mr. Director on set trying to be anybody. It was just me doing that as an expression.
Yeah.
And so what a difference.
Yeah. There's a massive irony there where you let it all fall apart. This idea of who you were, Mr. Director man or whatever. And after that all fell to the, it just crumbled before your eyes, you became, in my view, such a better filmmaker. Like the stuff you're doing now is really good. It's really enjoyable to watch. Tons of people are liking it too. Yeah. Not that is a mark of good quality work, but I'm telling you from my personal perspective.
Yeah.
And you became, like I said before, just a much more enjoyable person to hang around. So there's a deep truth to that too, right? When you let go.
There was a huge attachment going on. There still is. I mean, you can't get rid of it.
No, of course.
When you're a human being, you'll have attachments to roles, to titles, to a whole slew of things. But
and I'll tell you this too, just roles reversed for a second, and this shows you the degree to which we as emotional creatures trigger each other. Last year was a tough year, and I've spoken a little bit about how that culminated in a bit of a burnout and me having to change up formats and try to figure out a new rhythm and balance that works for me.
Right.
But I was so happy for you, but it was also challenging to see you smash it. You do these videos and they would get tremendous amounts of views.
Yeah.
And I felt the performance of my videos was decreasing because I was experimenting a lot and trying to figure out what I wanted. And that was a knock on my ego that I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
Because I was this high and mighty, in our nuclear family, you Mr. YouTuber guy.
Yeah.
And here you come in, my dad, this
super weird, right?
This
that
guy
was so strange.
Well, a few years ago, I saw you as this like decrepit, I don't want to be like this guy. And now here you are strolling right in and you're smashing it on social media. So it was like, what the fuck? I had to really reconsider my ideas.
I think we all were like, what the fuck happened? We're still like, what the fuck's going on with this channel, right? But it was, you're right. It was, what's the trigger for you?
Because you were, and here's the thing. This is where I both of us have our gripes about the metrics and the performance standards. I hate them. They're so not representative of quality of work. But it was getting to my head that, some of your videos were getting more views, right, than mine. And I was just like, first, just triggered about it. And then second, it's a great opportunity to do a little ego check and be like, well, this is how it is. And good that I have a chance now to do some work on this and detach from it a little bit, because I don't want to turn into an egomaniac, right? And become so attached to this thing that is, that makes me me.
So great message there, right? That if there's anything you feel attached to, then you have to look at it. Why am I so attached to that? Why is that so important? How is it keeping me from so much else, right? Yeah. It's good that you did that. And, of course, we welcome breakdowns in this family. We allow them. I think that's what works. We allow things. And okay, maybe you don't want to use that specifically, but, you had your phase last year where things got difficult for you, right? The burnout.
Definitely.
This kind of comparison, the reinventing of yourself. And it's funny because I think a lot of parents, a lot of people would see, oh, my child's breaking down, or my child's going through a difficult phase.
Yeah.
Must do something to stop it. And I see that now more than ever is an opportunity to say, okay, learning can happen here, right? Reinventing and rising from the ashes or whatever that looks like, and what a gift that is.
Yeah, you seemed really unconcerned, but not in like a detached way, but like you
With
were
your stuff?
with me going through my shit. Yeah.
No, because it was about letting you go through your shit.
Yeah.
You have to go through your shit. Because if you don't, then what would you have done? You'd have tried to grow the channel more. Mm-hmm. You would have tried to force things, right? And you knew that certain things were not working. You were clear. And you just had to figure out, okay, what's the attachment? What am I doing that's not working for me? What do I need to fix? What do I need to change, really?
You do have, I mean, I can say with confidence, you have a high degree of understanding now about what comes out of this.
Yeah.
And I will say on my end, going through some of that as well, where it does feel like facets of my identity are falling apart before my eyes. I'm not the person I thought I was, right? This performer.
Yeah.
It helped me have more compassion for what you went through, right? Or what anyone who's having a breakdown or, a crisis period is going through.
Yeah.
And I think we look with scorn at people that go through that kind of thing, like, ugh,
I mean, back in the day, any kind of breakdown, mental institution.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like there's no understanding what is this person going through, right? That's painful, that needs to be worked through.
Yeah. And even with even recently with celebrities, right? There's such a lack of empathy or understanding of what's going on underneath.
That's true. That is true.
And it's so easy to just be judgmental about it and be like, ugh, well.
And I know that. I know that part of me. I know when I get judgmental, when I'm looking at something from the outside. Mm-hmm. And so, I would say can I ask humanity to do this? Probably not. But if we could, it goes back to going inside ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And finding the compassion for ourselves, and then being able to say, well, if I am going through these difficult times and I can do this work and overcome them, well, then somebody else could as well, and not judge them. But it's too easy. We're human. It's too easy.
Yeah. Were there any other things that you wanted to share about this journey you were on? Because I really tried, because there's so much detail.
Yeah.
And I know we both have a tendency to get lost in details, but I wanted to just try to guide people along these last 5 years. But was there anything else that you wanted to share that was really significant for you? For anybody else going through, be it a midlife crisis, a quarter life crisis?
I'm kind of feeling like drawing conclusions here, but I would say, again, maybe to repeat the point, let the crisis happen. What is a crisis? It's
a label. It's a negative label we place on a period of change where you are required to face some hard truths.
Yeah.
And if anything, that's a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's the theme of what we're talking about here. I don't know that I can add any more.
Yeah.
Did you have any other question about what happened or want to explore any other aspect of it?
Well, I point to you as an example of someone who can change, right? And the implications of that are important because it shows you that no matter how ugly you feel or shitty you feel through a difficult period, it's not forever. It doesn't have to be forever, right?
True.
Based on the degree to which you're willing to work on yourself, right? And do the emotional stuff.
Because you can make it last forever. It'll be the same spinning stuff.
Yeah. It's not building back bigger or stronger, right? It's oftentimes doing the exact opposite of that. But I guess any insights that you have, or this took you years. So I think it's fair to say that it's a very slow process.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you feel there was any turning point where things were...
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good question. No, it was just this continual work on the hard stuff, again, with an amazing coach, therapist. It just naturally happened. I don't know even how to put it into words. I think part of it along the way was exploring these edits,
Yeah.
Finishing some of those family edits, doing the behind the scenes.
Now, I don't
going
want
to Iceland and coming back and...
Well, this does make me think of something, and I don't want to be insensitive at all. So I'm not saying it's one for one, but it does make me think of soldiers that have PTSD and the therapy that exposes them to certain scenes, right?
Yeah.
I'm not at all saying that's the same thing, but it was so fascinating to me, your willingness to go back to crazy painful memories.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just basically the worst version of yourself. I mean, one very visual example is the weight that you lost during this period.
Oh, yeah.
You were very skinny.
Yeah.
You were probably stressing so much.
Consumed with stress.
Worried thoughts.
I aged so much. I lost so much hair.
Yeah.
It was just crazy.
So your willingness to revisit that.
I think this podcast, actually, what's cool for me is it made me realize how good that experience was. You know? Because sometimes I'll argue in my head. I wish it hadn't happened.
Really?
Like, what was good about it? What was so great that I couldn't,
Wow.
I'll argue. The head wants to argue, right? It's all that. But these are good reminders. These are reminders that it was worth it.
Well, I'll tell you from my perspective, best thing that could have happened.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny to say that about such an intense experience?
Yeah.
Best thing that could have happened. I mean, on my end, I grew tremendously. My confidence really grew a lot because I was in a sort of sink or swim situation, and I swam.
Right.
And that led to the channel taking off and the self-belief to go for it. But on a maybe even bigger, definitely bigger level, my relationship with you, with these kinds of very delicate human dynamics.
Right.
Learning about anger and loss and respect.
Yeah.
And the loss of respect.
Yeah.
But then also the capacity for human beings to grow and change.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel profoundly changed by my own internal work on that experience.
Yep.
And not just blotting it out of my memory.
Right.
So.
Wow. Yeah.
Thanks for the vulnerability.
Yep.
And willingness to be open about this. I think one thing both of us have in common is a bizarre desire to want to share more of ourselves.
I know.
For very personal reasons, though, right? It's like there's something about putting stuff like this out publicly. It's a chance for us to learn about ourselves, right? And I can say with confidence, and I think this is totally true for you too, we do it for ourselves.
I know. I don't even try to teach anything or to be wise. It's just my own self-expression.
Yeah.
It's annoying when people don't get what I'm doing.
But you can't make them get it.
But I can't get that 5-10%, that just exists. But there's a thing in our family about expressing, and learning about that. And just whether it's through the artistic stuff or through how we're feeling. You and Mom have traditionally been way better at that because you will approach the person and say, let's talk about it. And I'll still hide at times, but I'm learning that it's important to just bring out yourself and say what's on your mind and express. And you're right. We have this thing about sharing. I guess I do it more through video than anything else, but it's there. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap this up. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. This was great. When you first told me, well, let's talk about 2018, I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we did.
It's just such a rich topic, you know, and I'm just so glad that we're here now. Yeah. I had no idea we would be here now. That's part of the crazy thing. You know?
Yeah.
I think it's also just so important to share because you don't see this kind of thing very often on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Who the hell talks about this kind of thing with their parents, right? So I won the lottery with having you and Mom. So
it goes both ways, Bands.
All right. Love you.
I just said Bands. I don't know.
Beep. Yeah, exactly. The nicknames. That was a conversation with my dad. I'll leave a link to his work in case you're curious to check it out in the description or the show notes, as well as ways you can support this podcast if you're enjoying it. The support really means a lot to me. Thank you so much for listening.